Tales from an Old Farmhouse. The past 3 falls, I lived in a creepy old farmhouse while I worked a seasonal job at a nature center in Delaware. My roommate Katie was an intern a few years younger than me. She would often go out in the evening to spend time with her boyfriend or other friends. One night I was reading in the living room. Katie came downstairs and I could hear her in the kitchen, preparing to leave. She came back into the living room and asked, "Do you know who the person is that is sitting outside?" This was a startling question because no one should have been outside our house. I walked with her to the kitchen and looked out the window. I could see a person sitting on a brick wall next to the nature center. In particular, the person's khaki pants stood out, but the rest of their body was hard to see. I turned out the kitchen light so we could get a better look through the window. When we looked again, we realized that it wasn't a person at all. What we thought was a pair of pants was just 2 burlap bags that someone had left leaning against the wall. We laughed about it and Katie headed out the door. Another peculiar thing about the house was the scratching sounds that came from the walls. Many nights I was in my bedroom and heard these noises. I suspected that they were coming from mice or squirrels. One of my other roommates told me a story of seeing a flying squirrel peeking out of the fireplace one evening. Speaking of mice, one night I was sleeping in my room and I heard a rustling noise coming from a plastic container where I had some food. I shined my flashlight in that direction and the noise stopped. I waited and heard nothing. I turned the light off and tried to fall back asleep. I heard the rustling again. Now I was positive that something living was in my bedroom. I turned the ceiling light on and looked around, but didn't find anything. It was around 5 a.m., so I decided to take a pillow and blanket downstairs and sleep the final hours on the couch. But first, I set a mouse trap in my bedroom. I was lying on the couch directly under my bedroom. I wasn't even asleep yet when I heard the mouse trap snap. Then I heard some thumping as the mouse thrashed around, then silence. I waited a bit, then went up to check the mouse trap. I was freaked out enough just having to deal with a dead mouse first thing in the morning, but then things got worse. A large, slimy parasite had crawled out of the mouse and was squirming across my bedroom floor. I was so disgusted. I grabbed some paper towels and a plastic bag and cleaned everything up, but did not even attempt to go back to sleep. The power went out many times when I lived in that house. The surrounding area had a lot of trees, and often when there was a thunderstorm, a tree would fall on the power lines and the house would lose power for many hours. The nature center had a backup generator, but the house did not, so some evenings I would have to sit in the dark waiting for the power to come back on. The scariest part of the house was the basement. As it got cooler in the fall, we took the air conditioners out of the windows and were told to put them in the basement. To get there, you had to go outside and open 2 large metal doors in the ground. A pair of steps descended into the darkness. I remember seeing some old bicycles and other random objects lying around, plus some snake skins, but thankfully no snakes. I finished the job as quickly as possible and got out of there. There were also rumors about the attic. The door to the attic was in the ceiling of one of the bedrooms. Thankfully, I never had that bedroom. Last year, my roommate was so scared that he put a bookshelf directly under the attic door so it could not open. I never went to the attic, but I was told that a former resident used it as an office. There was also a rumor of a dentist chair being up there. Every year in the house, we had to deal with stink bugs. They got particularly bad at certain times and came in through gaps in the air conditioners. You heard a loud buzzing sound as one spiraled around the room looking for a place to land. We often ended up catching or killing dozens of them as they invaded the house. One of the creepiest stories came when I started my second year of working at the nature center. My room in the farmhouse was not available yet, so I had to sleep in the lodge for a few nights. The lodge was a large building where school groups could stay overnight. The center of the building was a large meeting room and kitchen. To each side was a wing with a shower room and a large sleeping room with bunk beds. If you have seen the rows of bunk beds for military basic training, it looked like that. It was the end of August during a heat wave. The main floor was scorching hot, so I decided I would sleep in the basement. The basement was a large room with a concrete floor. The lodge was built on a hill, so the basement had a row of windows and doors which had a pleasant view in the daytime but was creepy at night. The other side of the room had some large metal doors that went to various mechanical rooms and who knows where else. I had a cot designed to be used after natural disasters and a sleeping mat I had taken from one of the bunk beds. I put the cot in the middle of the room and tried to sleep. Normally, I don't have trouble sleeping in new places, but I was so freaked out to be sleeping alone in this room that I hardly got any sleep. I actually spent 2 nights there before I was able to move into the farmhouse. Sometimes I would walk around the property at night. The nature center consisted of a few hundred acres with hills, forest, fields, a creek, and many miles of hiking trails. No one was supposed to be there at night except the 3 of us that lived there. Occasionally, I would see or hear others. Usually it was just cars in the main parking lot as young people looked for a place to hang out or couples looking for a place to hike at night. One of my favorite nighttime stories was Halloween of my first fall working there. I went out after dark to put the chain across the entranceway, but there were 2 cars in the parking lot. One of the cars was running. I went back to the house and told my roommate John, and he said we should go kick them out. We got into my car and drove into the parking lot. I pulled up near the car and John jumped out. He went up to the car holding his flashlight like he was a police officer and knocked on the window. I heard him tell the people that we were closed and that they had to leave. We had feared that it was troublemakers, but it turned out to just be a young couple looking for a private spot. They left and we put the chain up. I could share other stories, but I think these will suffice to show that my time living at the nature center was full of unexpected situations, and when I reflect back on them, I feel some nostalgia for that farmhouse and my friends there. Please subscribe for more English listening content. This is David B. Thanks for listening.